Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. We're going to talk about the Eternals trailer, which dropped earlier today. Lots of buzz around it, and normally we wouldn't really be interested in the latest Marvel trailer, but of course, this is from director Chloe Zhao, recent Oscar winner, and we've heard so many things about how she's putting a unique spin on the Marvel formula, at least visually, storytelling, we might have to wait for at least another trailer to kind of get a sense of that. To quote the film drunk, people who love Chloe Zhao but don't love Marvel do not know what to do with themselves right now. We're kind of in that camp, like I'm more interested in this as a Chloe Zhao film. And what it seems we have here is literally like what you'd imagine when you think a Marvel movie directed by Chloe Zhao. A lot of these shots look like you could throw them right into like a Nomadland trailer and they would fit in pretty well. The colors, lens choices are kind of similar. The emphasis on landscapes, we see like barely any CGI in here. A lot of like the portraits of the characters is like this wide angle, like sort of rotating, constantly moving camera. There's even like a Terrence Malick like hand sweeping through the grass shot. So this is a totally new look for a Marvel film. The trailer doesn't actually give us too much about the story. I don't really know much about the characters at all. The trailer is like 100% just tone and photography. It looks like it might be hopping like between different centuries and different continents around the world. So that's really cool. There's a lot of opportunity there. The cinematography here, just off the bat, it does look a little gray, and there's actually been a lot of sort of backlash against the cinematography. There's two different camps here. This is the most beautiful fucking thing I've ever seen, oh my god. And then this is just bland, like Chloe Zhao's vision got completely squashed through the Marvel machine, and they just made it look gray as fuck. Marvel definitely has a problem with their films looking bland. Like, you can take the most visually interesting of their films, like Black Panther, which actually is a really good looking movie, but even still, there's just something about it that is bland. Like, I think we'll be able to see it in like 20 years from now when we look back at this like era of superhero films, and we're like, why are we kind of like putting up with how kind of bland or like gray or like washed out looking some of these shots are? Just kind of like the style of these films for some reason that has caught on. This one's definitely less like colorful looking. I would say it's a plus that there's a minimal use of CGI. Like it doesn't have like random like purple, yellow electricity shit going on in the sky, and there's not fake lens flares and shit. That's the kind of stuff that you'll see people like posting shots from a Marvel movie that's just like Thanos and like random like electricity all around him, and they're like, you can't tell me that Marvel movies don't have amazing cinematography. And it's like, that's just like stuff. This movie was not bombarded with stuff. It's also not shot against like green screens. I mean, this is probably the least green screeny Marvel film maybe ever. Black Widow doesn't look like it as much. But I'm a little mixed because on one hand, I do think that Chloe Zhao's style is coming through. The type of camera movement, I mean, that's getting a little overlooked in this conversation about whether or not it looks, bland as far as the color palette goes. But like the movement of the camera, I think looks great. It's sort of bringing these characters down to earth a little bit and making them feel a little more like they belong in the world that we actually live in. Whereas there's a quality to a lot of Marvel films where it just feels like everything's in like a mint condition, like action figure packaging. Although I can see how the grayish, desaturated color palette maybe could have been a little more vibrant. I think undoubtedly, like, this is Chloe Zhao's vision. So whether this is good or bad doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, whether Chloe Zhao was able to take the reins or whether Marvel did. Like, this really does look like Chloe Zhao had a ton of influence over the visuals of the film. Whether you like them or not is another question. I actually think the result that we're getting, where we're seeing it look a little bit more bland like than we're used to with a superhero film, is just a result of there not being as much CGI and the emphasis on natural locations and natural lighting. In a Nomadland or The Rider, we might not really think of that as being lacking because that is just sort of the style, but in a superhero film, we expect more. So to me, this is more of just a result of Chloe Zhao doing her thing inside of a Marvel film. I object to that slightly. I think if you watch like Nomadland or the Rider clips, the colors in those pop a lot more than they do here. And of course, we don't have the same cinematographer on those films. It's being done by Ben Davis, who's done a lot of Marvel films. So in that way, maybe the look is a little bit marveled up. But they did recruit Joshua James Richards to be the camera operator. Joshua James Richards wasn't like excluded from this project because they were like, oh, you can't handle this one little man. In an interview, he kind of said that he was the first to throw his hands up and say like, I don't know if I know how to shoot this type of project, because Ben Davis, you can say what you want about like how his films look, but There's a whole video actually that was kind of interesting I saw of him talking about how the cinematographer in a Marvel film or a big studio production works with the head of visual effects to create the look of their film. So there's a lot more that goes into shooting a movie like this that he probably is really good with. Part of me kind of thinks it's funny that we've come to this point where like indie filmmaker style has been sort of captured by Marvel to the point where we have a superhero film that looks kind of like a Terrence Malick movie where like people in costumes are walking around like deserts. Like, it's almost funny to me in a way because that is like never what a superhero film has felt like. And it's like really trying to be very soulful. That seems to be like the main vision for it. So let's make everything as soulful as possible. Again, I think some of the shots are really beautiful in this. And I think we really just have to see the film to know how the pacing is going to feel. We don't even know really much about the story at all. If the visuals have a union with the story, then we're not going to think of it as like, oh, this is too bland. We don't even see a lot of action in this. We don't know if there's going to be action scenes that are shot, you know, in an interesting way or in long takes. Like, there's so much we don't know. Yeah, I think we need to wait for the actual movie to come out to be able to judge if the cinematography works for the film, because another aspect of cinematography that we're all overlooking and the sort of discourse going on here is how it serves the story and how it serves the film. And you can't necessarily tell that just based on like the images from the trailer. My first reaction to this trailer was like, all right, it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I wasn't over the moon about it necessarily. Maybe because there's just not a whole lot revealed about like the story and I can't tell, what's going on with the characters, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Yeah, just the nature of the film, there being this ensemble of superheroes, like not really my thing. Although Marvel can definitely make a movie like that good. I thought Endgame was like as well done as you could have had a superhero movie be. So, you know, just keeping an open mind about it. I was pretty like in the middle on the trailer. I thought some of it was very beautiful. I think some of the cinematography is superior to most other Marvel films for sure. And then other parts, like, I'm just not sure how to feel about yet. And I guess, you know, since this channel is called The Oscar Expert and there's that guy back there, we can talk about if my opinion on the movie's Oscar chances has changed at all. I'd say that this does register as a long shot. I don't know what Eternals is saying in regards to, like, its themes, but I doubt it's going to make waves in that department the way that Black Panther did. I don't know if it can get a cinematography nomination with, you know, these sort of mixed feelings that we're seeing about it. Maybe it can get production designs, maybe costumes. Probably will get a visual effects nomination, and sound. That's gonna be pretty iffy. I don't think it would get costumes. And the score actually sounded pretty good. It's the composer who did Westworld and Game of Thrones. I actually think that the potential nominations include score. If the cinematography works, then I would not count that out. Visual effects and like maybe production design. I wouldn't rule the movie out for like Best Picture. You know, they could campaign it, but this trailer doesn't necessarily like increase my confidence towards that because it simultaneously makes you realize like, oh, okay, we have a Chloe Zhao film on our hands and like we have a Marvel film on our hands. Also, that bit at the end where the kid's like, oh, Captain America and Iron Man, and it's like, ugh. I don't want to watch this movie and be reminded of the rest of the franchise. Like, I just want this to be very singular. I guess they've had to put that in the end because, you know, fans like that shit. And if you have some fun opinions, you can comment those down below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. What does MCU stand for to you?